Hey guys, it's Brad and Rich from Dragonball 7th Universe, and today we'll be talking about Saiyan history. And Rich, do you want to start us off?
Hell yeah, I do. All right, guys. The first thing we're going to talk about a little bit before we get to the same history is some slightly related points. We're going to talk about Frieza a little bit, and something me and Brad and Tony have been discussing over the past few days. Uh, One big point we want to make is a common misconception that Frieza is what people like to refer to as an Arcosian, something that King Kai brought up when he talked to Goku. He said the Saiyans met the Arcosians and struck an alliance and started or took part in the Planet Trade Organization organized by the Arcosians. This became assumed later on that Frieza had a race and that he was the Arcosians or whatnot because he was determined to be the leader of the Planet Trade Organization in the Frieza saga. This is actually conflicted in a later interview where Toriyama discusses Frieza does not actually have a race. He simply comes from a family line of mutants, a particularly strong one, actually. So, what we're going to say here is that pretty much later on, we feel like the Arcosians were either a separate entity or maybe worked for Frieza. Either way, they're not the same thing. Frieza's
No.
not an Arcosian. And another point you would make is that specifically King Kai says that the Saiyans struck an alliance with the Arcosians, whereas when it came to Frieza, it was specifically stated many times over that they worked for Frieza. He was much more impressive. He did not see them as equals. He called them monkeys on several occasions, even.
Yeah,
So
Frieza was a racist.
he was quite racist. I mean, Frieza doesn't even have his own race, so he was pretty much just thought he was better than everyone. Uh,
Mm.
so, for whatever reason, Frieza's family or clan seems to be the leaders of the planet trade. We don't know if they were opposing planet trade organizations to Arcosians and took them out. We don't really know what happened. That's not officially stated anywhere. Anything outside of that is assumption. You can say opinion is this, but to state something as fact is kind of spreading false information. So all
Hmm.
we can really say is the Arcosians and Frieza are separate things, and at some point the Saiyans were working for Frieza, and he
Yeah.
was the leader of a planet trade organization or the planet trade organization. We don't really know.
Yeah,
Um,
he was actually his own personal empire, but it was under the guise of the Planet Trade Organization, so it was quite shifty in that way.
right. And so, yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
my point on the Frieza part. The other thing we were talking about is Jocko, another official reference to the Dragon Ball universe. I think Bradley knows a little bit more on that than I do.
Yeah, if any of you guys have actually read Jacko the Galactic Patrolman, if you haven't, I highly recommend you do. Rich, I'm kind of talking to you here. You need to read that. Um,
Yeah.
if you get around to reading that, in an interview before it came out, Toriyama was asked, well, Jacko's a member of the Galactic Patrolman who seemed to be a galaxy-wide police force, and he was asked, well, if these guys are a police force, why don't they do something about Frieza? And Toriyama simply stated, well, there's nothing they can do. By this point in his life, Frieza's already too powerful. He already has too many men, too many planets under his thumb. There's just nothing they could do to physically oppose him. He's the equivalent of the Roman Empire. There's just nothing anyone can do to oppose him at his peak right now. But that's why whenever they do get an opportunity, they will do something to stop him. Because not to ruin Jacko the Electric Patrolman for anyone, well, it is actually going to ruin him. So if you don't want any spoilers for Jacko, maybe skip forward about 2 minutes. But Jacko is actually sent to Earth to kill Goku because the Galactic Patrolmen get word that a space pod has been sent from planet Vegeta to Earth, and that it's only a young Saiyan child. So they send Jacko to eliminate Goku. He actually does say at one point in the manga, it's quite funny. If it was an adult Saiyan, he wouldn't even try and fight it. He wouldn't have. He would just leave, leave Earth to its fate.
Well, on that note, I think we've kind of covered a little bit of the Planet Trade Organization and that relation to Saiyan history, but we want to dive into a few other actual misconceptions about Saiyan history. And it's kind of frustrating running a page too, because you even feel stupid. I felt stupid when I started realizing this, and I started discussing this with the other guys, Brad and Tony. Um, we were even accepting things that have just been spread around the internet And when we actually took a moment to look at Saiyan history to do this podcast, we looked at it more deeply and we realized there's a lot of false information being spread around that people just simply are taking for fact because they read it and it sounds logical, but if you do a little bit of research, you find out that it was made up. It was made up.
Yeah.
To kick off with that, we'll say that King Kai states to Goku that the Saiyans destroyed the Tuffles, and they were not spacefaring at that time. Basically, in the reference back to the Saiyan battle or the Tuffle War or whatnot, the Saiyans are shown to be very barbaric, primitive. They're not advanced. They're tribal, and King Kai specifically says that when they destroyed the Tuffles, they destroyed so much technology they couldn't leave the planet. This suggests that the Saiyans did not have any means to be spacefaring until later on when they met the Arcosians, which happened after the battle with the Tuffles. So something that gets spread around a lot and is absolutely not true is that the Saiyans came from a different planet prior to Planet Plant / later on Vegeta. This simply isn't true because on Planet Plant they were not spacefaring until defeating the Tuffles and meeting the Arcosians. So that's a misconception about Saiyan history. The Planet Plant really is their original planet. That is where they originally came from. This kind of goes on a little bit more. I mean, some people may make reference to something King Kai talked about with the Super Saiyan of Legend. The Super Saiyan destroyed himself and the planet he was on. We would say that the only way he could have done this is if the Saiyans were spacefaring at that moment in time. This suggests that since they were not spacefaring until after defeating the Tuffles and meeting Arcosians, and the Saiyan of Legend killed himself in the planet he was on 1,000 years ago, the Tuffle battle happened a really long time ago, like over 1,000 years ago, which also leads you to another point and misconception. A lot of people say King Vegeta led the battle against the Tuffles. He defeated them and brought the Saiyans up, and everything became Planet Vegeta. That's not actually true. That cannot actually be true.
It's only seen in GT, like we said, yeah.
Yeah, it's staying in GT, and that's the point, is that if you're bending over backwards to make a non-canon story fit into the actual Toriyama-created Dragon Ball universe, you're going about it all wrong. One thing, it doesn't work with canon official comments whatsoever, so GT even conflicts with its own self, because, like I said, the Saiyans were not spacefaring until they defeated the Tuffles, and the Saiyan of Legend killed himself on a separate planet. This couldn't have happened unless the Saiyan Tuffle battle happened over 1,000 years ago. So
yeah, the Saiyans have been doing what they've been doing for quite a while.
Yes, and that's further evidenced by the fact that they've been doing the thing where they send their babies to other planets for literally. King Kai references it as if it's something they've been doing for a long time. Babies have to land on a planet, grow up, take it over, come back. This has been happening for generations. So, King Vegeta Planet Vegeta might just be named after each king, or maybe Vegeta's family lineage is just Vegeta all the way back. We don't actually know that. But the King Vegeta that we know, who died against Frieza, he did not lead the battle against the Tuffles. There's no way he even existed at that time, because they've had to have been spacefaring for over 1,000 years based off canon references to the Saiyan of Legend. So, on that point, let's see. Brad?
Oh, yes, the timeline. Crap, I missed my cue. Some of you listen to what we're saying right now might be feeling a little conflicted because of what it says in the Dragon Ball timeline. This timeline is actually unofficial. As far as we can tell, it's nothing officially stated by Toriyama, because events in this timeline that are listed are events that happen either in GT or prior to Dragon Ball that involve GT and movie characters. Like at one point it says about when Baby first landed on the planet M2, like 300 years before the series, etc., etc. All that is just made up. So what we're saying might seem to contradict that, but that's not official anyways, so it doesn't need to be recognised at all in an official capacity.
Yeah. So moving on from that, that's about all the misconceptions we can talk about Saiyan history. Now, something to maybe kind of just ponder. These aren't things that we're gonna quite say as fact. We're just kind of pondering about the Super Saiyan God, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of rough because these two things conflict with each other. One thing is, Tolis makes the statement that Saiyan hair is indicative of class. Like he's like, I'm a low class Saiyan like Goku, and you can tell because we have the same hairstyle. This is conflicting because, in reference to the Super Saiyan God, he has hair, and we know Super Saiyan God forms, in base form at least, they have base form hair but red. So the base form hair of the Super Saiyan God looks like Vegeta. Vegeta is an elite class Saiyan. Yet, his brother Tarble is also the very same hairstyle as him, but he was a low class Saiyan and sent to another planet. So
Mm-hmm.
the hair thing is something that I don't know if we can. I wanted to draw on before, but when we talked about the Super Saiyan God and then took a look at Tarble today, it's kind of hard to accept that that can't be really regarded as fact. It's more regarded as a belief. But on that point, we were gonna say that maybe it was possible that the Super Saiyan God was related to Vegeta. If the hair thing is true, he's either related to Vegeta or he's an elite class Saiyan because he has a similar hairstyle. But
Yeah.
again, Tarble is a low class Saiyan, has the same hairstyle. So that kind of conflicts with that idea that we had.
Mm. Well, another point we were going to make that was quite interesting was that we figure the events of the Super Saiyan God fighting the other Saiyans is potentially. Did we say it was before or after the Tuffle War?
Yes,
Before. It was before, wasn't it? Yeah.
we believe
Well,
it had to have been before, yeah.
yeah. So it seems there might have been some sort of Saiyan civil war before the actual war with the Tuffles, where, as Rich said before, the Saiyans were very tribal and primitive in their nature, and maybe some other Saiyan at the time was going around unifying the tribes to rise up against the Tuffles. But maybe Vegeta's lineage, we don't know. Whoever this Super Saiyan God and the other five Saiyans, right? Six in total.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting that right. Um, they were against it, so that's why they made the Super Saiyan God to try and oppose the evil Saiyans. But obviously, we know the evil Saiyans won, and then the war with the Tuffles happened.
Well, the one thing I think is what they said in the Super Saiyan or the Battle of the Gods is that the Super Saiyan God did defeat the evil Saiyans, but his power wore out, and over time, evil came back into the Saiyan
Mm.
community. Uh, I I guess that might be an opinion difference between the two of us, but one thing I was going to make a point off of that specific opinion of mine to kind of solidify our idea that this came before the Tuffle War is that the reason why there was civil war amongst the Saiyans is specifically because they have an intense desire to battle. And so
Mm-hmm.
they don't have someone to unleash that on. They unleash it on each other. That was the cause of civil war amongst the Saiyans. So once they defeated the Tuffles and made an alliance with the Arcosians and they became spacefaring, they were able to, they had an outlet, so to speak, for that battle nature they had to go take over other planets. So that would be a point where civil war didn't really or shouldn't have really existed amongst the Saiyans anymore because they were able to let out that need and desire to fight. So that's the grounds we're saying we believe the Super Saiyan God appeared before the Tuffle War and their alliance with the planet trade. Obviously, that's just an opinion and it's not confirmed anywhere. But I pretty strongly would believe in that unless I heard something official stating otherwise.
Yeah, and quickly to take it back to Jacko, actually, sort of coincides with what we're saying here. Is before the Saiyan war with the Tuffles, the Saiyans were very primitive and barbaric. But again, referencing Jacko the Black Galactic Patrolman, when we actually do see the planet Vegeta, because we see Gine and Bardock send young Goku to Earth, and the society there looks completely different to what we saw when King Kai was telling Goku about the Saiyans' history. By this point, they seem much more civilized and have almost day-to-day jobs. Like Gine works in a meat shop or something like that. She's not even a fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There's a pretty huge difference between them at that point.
Yeah, it seemed they needed something to sort of unify them, and then that's maybe when the whole pride thing started to come into it. They were like, we're the Saiyans, we're the best, we don't need to fight each other because we know we're the best, so we'll fight everyone else.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think uh, that's all I can say on that. I guess another thing we would talk about real quick is something I read interesting, just an interesting point I saw in an interview lately about Toriyama is he actually gave us sort of a breakdown on Saiyan class. He said there are only two, at the time of the destruction of the Saiyans, when Frieza killed them, there were only two elite class Saiyans in the entire race at that time, and it was Vegeta and his father. Then there were 10 middle class Saiyans. He specifically said these numbers 10 middle class Saiyans, and the entire rest of the Saiyan race were low class Saiyans. So, Bardock was powerful, but he was a powerful low class Saiyan. Additionally, I would say that Saiyan class is based off birth power and not the end result. Obviously, Goku's a low class Saiyan, even though he became a god, way powerful than other. He's still low class because he was born with low class power. So on that note, we have another. Technically, Akira didn't say this last part. He said all the former stuff I just said, but I have a fourth class I think exists, and this is just my opinion. But since classes are based on birth power, I think Broly is technically above elite class. He'd be what we would just call it a legendary class because his birth power was a power level of 10,000. So it was far above the elite class, and that's pretty much just like what my idea is on that. I think that's the last bit of anything I can come up for the Saiyans.
Yeah, like you said, they have the whole birth power, and it seems to stem a lot from Saiyan culture. It shows what kind of society they actually had. It was very much a very Darwinian society. They were like the Spartans times 100. Like, for example, Tarbell was a member of the royal family who, pride themselves among above all others because he was born with such a pitiful birth power. He was exiled, just sent away.
Yeah. So the last part I guess we wanted to talk about is something me and Brad kind of disagree on a little bit. Is the legitimacy of the movies, pretty much. I stand by the belief, and I still do. And I think Brad has a good point opposing me, but I still feel I feel unchanged, at least as of yet. Like hear more, but I think here's our breakdown of canon. I think Brad mostly agrees with this, but my breakdown of canon is if Toriyama created it and it fits in the main timeline, it's canon. Period. Outside of that, when you're talking about alternate timelines, if Toriyama created it but it doesn't fit in the main timeline, then it happened in an alternate timeline, kind of like what happened with Future Trunks, the future he came from. That's what an alternate timeline is. Now, when you're talking about things like GT and fan fiction, which I'm sorry if it offends GT fans, but GT is exactly the same as fan fiction, and the reason why is because Toriyama didn't create it. If Toriyama
Get over it.
Yeah, if Toriyama didn't create it, it's not canon. It didn't even happen in an alternate timeline. It doesn't exist. It's a side story that's absolutely not related, no matter how bad you really, really want it to be. So
I would argue I would like to see Toei incorporate it into the multiverse. I think GT's been around since 1996. Not for all of us, but for the Japanese, it's been around since 1996. It's sort of stemmed in Dragon Ball culture. I think, for all its crappy parts, it's earned its place. It at least deserves to be part of the multiverse. But we don't ever have to touch on it again. It's just, it's that universe over there. We don't talk about that one.
I don't know. I mean, that might. I know that you have a personal love for GT, but I just
no, don't say that. Don't say that. I don't have a love for GT.
No, I hated the dialogue in it. I felt like, obviously Toriyama didn't want to do GT. He helped with the beginning stuff to just get it going, but by the time that came out, he wanted to be done with it, and they pushed anyways. And I think for that reason, and you can see, in Dragon Ball Z, you'll notice different types of art styles. In one episode, it'll be this crappy, blocky style where their biceps looks like it's made up out of series of rectangles. And then
I hit that.
Really good art style. and you would see it vary from episode to episode. And like every bit of GT is that blocky rectangle art style all the way from start to finish. It was just shit animation.
Rich, calm it down, calm. You're ranting.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we can do another episode on GT. We do actually plan on doing that, but all I would say is, on my point, opposed to Rich's, when it comes to canon, I'm somewhat of a manga purist. As far as I'm concerned, Dragon Ball canon is Dragon Ball minus Jacko the Galactic Patrolman, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Battle of Gods, Revival of Frieza, and the upcoming Dragon Ball Super series. Nothing else to me is official canon. Everything else, as Rich said, is alternate timeline, but that's just a little thing we disagree on.
I would say that I like that point of view, that only the manga is canon. I'll say that I won't say I like it. I'll say that I respect it. I respect that.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I see it as different levels. It's sort of like if anyone's, a big Star Wars nerd like me, you remember the old expanded universe had different levels of canon, like G canon, S canon, all that kind of stuff. To me, there's manga canon and there's anime canon. Like the Dead Zone movie is anime canon because there's a Garlic Jr. saga, but neither of them are manga canon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I can respect that view. I just think that, in the anime, there are things that are said in the anime that aren't said in the manga that are accepted as canon, even by manga purists. So I would rule that if both the anime and the manga say it and they don't directly conflict with each other, and it fits within the main timeline, personally, I accept that as canon. I think that obviously most of the movies do not fit within the main timeline. It had to be alternate. But I do think some of the movies, and I think some of the movies are canon simply because they had the possibility to. But the more you keep talking about this manga thing, the more my mind's starting to not on what I think about that. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it for the Saiyan history topic.
Yeah. So it was nice kind of talking with you guys, or at you guys. Just let us know in the comments what you think about what we had to say, if you disagree or agree with it, and especially if you have topics for future podcasts, because this is super not really known yet. I think even people on our fan page don't really know we're doing this right now. So if you see it and you have ideas for future podcasts, we can do Q&As or topics based off what you guys tell us. So please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of ideas, but, it's what you guys want to see that we want to put out there mostly.
Yeah, exactly. So, on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to you guys, all right? Catch you later.